Today is a true story that shaped the way for several movies, as in Silence of the Lambs, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho, and even some songs that were made from the true story of Ed Gein. This was named the House of Horrors, Butcher of Plainfield, also Murder Farm. It has several names that it was given, and I'll go over this and how this story, I do shape the form of these movies and songs. So I do have to give you a warning that this can be graphic and disturbing to a lot of viewers. So just remember that as you go to watch this, that there is some terrible things that he did in his lifetime. And also the information that I get is available to anyone. So this is just for educational purposes only. Gein was born August the 27th, 1906. His childhood was marked by isolation, abuse. His father was violent, alcoholic, but his mom was the one that definitely shaped his way of thinking, his life. Her name was Augusta. She believed that women, except for herself only, was corrupt. She basically isolated. Ed had an older brother named Henry, and she basically isolated them. They had moved to a farm, and Ed would go to school, but basically most of his time was working on the farm. Ed tried to make any friends. She would definitely say something to him and ridicule him about having friends. And so he just really stayed isolated to himself. It was said that at school he was shy and strange and would sometimes just randomly laugh out loud at his own personal jokes. His father died at the age, on April 1st, 1940 from heart failure at age 66. Ed and his brother at that point started doing odd jobs to help cover living expenses. And Ed actually babysitted. I'm just sitting here thinking, so once all this comes out in the future and you knew your kids were around this man after what he does, can you imagine what these parents felt, what they were thinking? Creepy. Ed's brother Henry began dating a divorced mother of two, and he planned to move in with her. Henry worried about Ed's attachment to their mom. He was very attached to their mom. And whenever he began to say things about their mom against her, Ed would always respond with shock and hurt. On May the 16th, 1944, Ed was burning away some marsh on the property. The fire got out of control. By the time the fire department came, it was like the end of the day, going into dark. It was getting dark. Ed then told everyone that his brother was missing. Henry was missing at that point. So they began to look, and using flashlights, they were looking around the property, and Henry was found face down on the ground. And it looked like he had been dead for some time. At first, it was reported as heart failure, possibly because he was not burned at all. But it was later reported that there were bruises on his head, but the police dismissed any kind of foul play, and the coroner released his death as asphyxiation. Later on, it was said that after Ed was caught for his crimes and being investigated, he was questioned about his brother Henry's death. George Arndt was the lead investigator, studied the case, and he wrote that it was possibly and highly likely that Henry's death was the Cain and Abel aspect of the case after he had questioned Ed, although Ed never admitted to killing his brother. So then With Henry dead, Ed and Augusta were alone. Then Augusta had a paralyzing stroke shortly after Henry started to take care of her. Then she had a second stroke and her health deteriorated rapidly, and Augusta died on 12/29 of 1945. Ed, of course, was devastated. He had lost his best friend and he felt all alone. Ed held on to the farm after his mother's death. He would earn money doing odd jobs. He boarded up the rooms that his mom mainly occupied and left them untouched. The only part of the house he left not untouched that he remained living in was the kitchen and a small room next to the kitchen where his bedroom that he would stay in. But the rest of it, the downstairs parlor, the living room, was all left untouched like his mom had left it, and he basically boarded it up. At this point, Ed became interested in adventure stories, particularly those involving cannibals and not. Ed received a subsidy from the federal government starting in 1951. He occasionally worked for the local road crew and crop crews. He sold 80-acre parcel of land that was Henry's. So he sold that to make money. Then, on the morning of November 16th, 1957, 58-year-old Plainfield hardware store owner, her name was Bernice Warden, disappeared. The hardware store's truck that they owned was seen driving from the rear of the building around 9:30 that morning. The store didn't have many customers, it was said, because it was hunting season at that time, but there just wasn't much traffic coming in and out. So I guess nobody really noticed that she was missing until her son, Frank, he was a deputy sheriff, and he came by the store to check on her around 5 p.m. And he noticed bloodstains on the floor. The cash register was open. And also, the last receipt that was written was Ed's receipt. And Frank told investigators that he knew that Ed had been by the night before and was supposed to come back in the morning to get a gallon of antifreeze. So he knew he was expected to come by, and the receipt was there. That was the last receipt that his mom, Bernice, had wrote. Ed was later picked up that afternoon. He was at a local grocery store and they picked him up. And then the investigators went over to his farm to investigate. And oh boy, what they found. He had been a very busy and bad man. Bad Ed. So Warden's body was found in a shed, decapitated. She was hung upside down by her legs with a crossbar, and her ankles had ropes in her wrist. Now, remember I gave the warning. Her body was dressed out like a deer. The insides were being taken out. She had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and the mutilations were made after her death. Then the investigators began searching the house, and the list that was found is so chilling. They found whole human bones in the house, a wastebasket made of human skins covering several chairs, skulls on the bedpost, female skulls with the top sawed off, and they were he made bowls out of them. There was a corset that was made from a female torso that had been skinned from the shoulders to the waist. He had made leggings from skin. He made masks from the skin of female heads. They found Mary Hogan's. She was a lady that had been missing too. They found her face, a face mask, just her face, in a paper bag. Bernice Warden's entire head was in a burlap sack. Bernice's heart was in a plastic bag in front of Ed's pork belly stove. They do not know what he intended to do with that. They do not know if he was into cannibalism, but they did find that. 9 vulvas in a shoebox, 8 a belt made from female human nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips used as a window shade drawstring, and a lampshade made from skin of a human face and female fingernails. Ed told investigators between 1947 and 1952 he had made as many as 40 night visits to 3 local grave sites to exhume recently buried women. He would only take the bodies that would resemble his mom. He said that he claimed that as many as 30 of those visits, he would go to these grave sites in a daze, and he woke up during his days, and so during approximately 30 of those visits, he would end up going back home since he'd woke up out of his daze empty-handed. And I just can't help but think, okay, so he went to these places, he says, in a daze, and he still stole, I think it was as many as 9 graves, but he did all those other things at his home. Was he in a daze the whole time? Crazy. So why was Ed doing all this? He had begun to create a woman suit soon after his mother's death. He basically said that he did this because he wanted to become his mother, literally crawl in her skin. Ed. So this is where these movies like Silence of the Lambs come in at, and Psycho, definitely. In 1957, authorities confronted Ed Gein with a list of missing person cases between the death of his mother and Warden. The lie detector test exonerated Ed, and psychiatrists concluded that his violence was only directed to women that were physically resembled his mother. On November 21st, 1957, Ed was arraigned on first-degree 1-count murder. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent and unfit for trial. You think? We know he's crazy. I mean, you had to know that. I mean, he is crazy with the things he did. We know he's crazy. He was sent to Central State Hospital for criminally insane, a maximum security facility, and was transferred later at Mendota State Hospital in Madison. Ed Gein spent the rest of his life in the mental hospital. Then you have to ask, what was the fate of his property? What happened? He had 195 acres and had the house and some buildings and his possessions. They were going to be auctioned off on March the 30th of 1958. But before that could even happen, so on March the 20th, the house caught on fire, and there were rumors that it might become a tourist attraction. So I think that they thought that maybe people, of course, didn't want that in their town, and it did look like it was arson. There was a trash can being burned near the property by a crew that was cleaning up, but that's not what caused the fire. It was suspected that the actual cause of the fire was never determined. Ed Gein died at the Mental Hospital Institute due to respiratory failure secondary to lung cancer on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. So Ed did receive a gravestone. And it was, people would go by his gravestone and chip away at it, wanting to have a souvenir, until the actual whole stone was stolen in 2000. The stone was then recovered in June of 2001. And at that point, it has been placed into the storage at the County Sheriff's Department. His graveside still remains unmarked now. Tell me what you think about this story. This is a true life Texas Chainsaw, Psycho, and Silence of the Lambs. Thank you for listening, and this is definitely a horrible story and crazy. So tell me what you think about this story, and hit like and subscribe on my Crime and Chaos Diaries, and tune in for my next video. I usually do about 2 a week. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a good weekend. Thanks. Bye.